One of the biggest excuses that we hear from you about why your dog is making mistakes or displaying bad behavior is often that you're not in training mode. Now listen, I'm here to tell you, you are always in training mode. There's no getting away from this. Your dogs are always learning. That means you always need to be training. I want to break this down with a simple analogy, and I don't often like to compare kids and young dogs because really they're very different species and they think and learn in very different ways. But I think that this analogy will really help with the understanding. Imagine if I was a parent and I limited my parenting to 15 minutes in the morning when I was in parenting mode and 15 minutes in the afternoon when I was doing the same, and the rest of the day I let the kids just run wild and gave them no guidance. You'd probably think I was crazy, right? So why is it any different for dog training? It's so important that I give my dog good, clean, consistent information because it is not any different for them. They're in learning mode all the time. Just because I'm not ready with my bait pouch on and ready to train does not mean that they're not learning. Good training requires great quality training equipment. To get your own training equipment, check out mccanndogs.store. I am not telling you that you need to train your dog 24 hours a day. I'm quite certain that you would call me crazy if that was the case as well. What I am telling you is that your dog is always learning, which means that you need to use good training and you also need to use good management. And management are all the tactics that ensure our dogs are not learning bad habits when we're not training. So using crates, making sure that we have them confined somehow when we can't watch them, making sure that they're under control somehow when they're in the house, be it a leash or a long line dragging, so that if they do start to get into a little bit of mischief, we can easily redirect those behaviors and help them learn how to be right on a more consistent basis. This video is not about management though. We've got lots of management videos on our channel that you can check out. This video is actually about moving from this constant training and management mode into more of a testing mode. Eventually we want to get to the point where we just live with our dogs and we expect them to listen in day-to-day life. And that comes with a good, smooth transition from training into testing and then into real life. But the real question is, what's the difference then between training and testing? Training as a concept is something that I will need to take some time with my dog to set up specific time to work on skills and drills. It's really important that I set up a quiet environment, I set up a good learning environment for my dog. A lot of times people will go out in the real world and they'll expect their dogs to learn out in the real world where there's all sorts of distractions. And truly, that's akin to us trying to learn calculus on a roller coaster. It's just not going to happen. We want to take the learner into a really well-planned environment so that they can grasp the lessons that we're teaching them. And then from there, we can start to add to that environment. I can start to add more distractions. I can start to add more challenges and help my dog understand how to do the skill, whatever that skill may be, even when there's lots of distractions that start to come and face them. What I want to make sure of is that my dog is close to about a 95% success rate before I throw in that testing thing. And 95% is pretty darn good, but it's not perfect, and that is okay. You do not have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect with your timing. You have to be as close as you can get, but we're humans. We're going to make mistakes, and guess what? Our dogs might make some mistakes too, so they don't have to be perfect either. We just want to make sure that they have a really good, clear idea, and we're not putting them in way over their heads before we've actually given them all of the foundation and all the information. We want to work through this together. Let me clarify with testing as well. Testing is a very calculated move, and testing is the thing that sits in between our training efforts and our trained dog later on down the road. And when I say we're going to test our skills, and this can be any skill, it doesn't necessarily just need to be response to name. That's what I'm talking about today, but this is your recall. This is your walking on lead. This is your stay training. All of the skills that you want your dog to learn, you are going to do through calculated testing. The burning question, of course, is how do you test in a calculated manner? And I'm going to do that by making sure that if my dog should fail the test, I can back myself up and make the thing happen, whatever that skill may be. If I call my dog's name and she doesn't respond, the last thing I want is for her to be off leash 25 feet away where there's nothing that I can do to make her now turn on her name. When I start my testing with response to name, I'm going to make sure that I have my dog on a 6-foot leash. I've got good control. I'm just going to wander and let her get mildly distracted. My goal is still that she gets it right. So I'm not going to go to a test and set her up to have her mind blown with lots of distractions. I'm going to go to the test and set her up basically to be successful. When I call her name, I want her to turn, I want her to be right, and I want her to earn those rewards. But if she doesn't, I want to be in a position where I can fix it quickly and not end up losing ground with my training. A lot of the times what happens is people think that those little mistakes aren't a big deal because they're going to fix them later. But unfortunately, what's actually happening is your dog is learning that sometimes it's okay to ignore you and sometimes it's not. And this is how we create two sets of rules, and we end up with dogs that are very leash-wise. And eventually, when Lucy is loose and 20 to 25 feet away from me, she's going to have it in her mind that it's okay to sometimes ignore her name, and sometimes it's valuable enough for her to turn on her name. I do not want her learning two sets of rules. I want good, clean, consistent information going to her so that the skills that I get back are always reliable. The last thing you want is for little mistakes to turn into bigger problems. One of the biggest benefits of calculated testing is that it's going to give me back good information without hindering my training process and having my dog think that making mistakes is okay or an acceptable part of things. What I want to be able to do with my testing is take the information that it gives me back into my training sessions. So for whatever reason, with that particular skill on this particular day and this particular distraction, my dog made some mistakes. So now I need to make sure that I fill in that gap and help her to be able to be successful once I move out of the testing phase and now she's a reliable adult with good off-leash skills, and I can make sure that when I call her name, she is going to turn regardless of the distraction. We're talking a lot about skills and training skills today. And if you'd like some help with your skills training with your dog, check out the link in the description below to our online life skills program, where we take you step by step through all the skills you need to have a well-behaved family member, and the McCann Dogs instructors are there to support you on your journey. It's important to stick with a high percentage of success. So let's keep that 95% number in mind as you continue to move through calculated testing with your dog. My job is not done when my dog is 95% perfect on the 6-foot leash. Now I might move to a 10 or a 20-foot leash, and that'll allow my dog to have a little bit more freedom. I can release her to go and sniff and go and adventure a little bit, but I can still keep control with that long line, and I can still work on my calculated testing efforts with response to name. When she's successful, fabulous. I'm going to make sure that the treats rain from the sky for her and all the value continues to be built. If she makes a mistake, I know that I've still got a leash or a line on, that I can make things happen, and I'm not going to end up backtracking in my training. If you need to take a step back in what you're asking your dog to do in terms of how difficult it is, you can absolutely do that. But we don't want to lose ground with our training and end up with our dogs learning that sometimes it's okay not to listen. Today we were working mostly outside, but the goal of training is to give our dogs more freedom. If you want some information on how to give your dog more freedom in the house, click this video right here. And on that note, I'm Instructor Shannon. Happy training.